right, hello, and officially welcome everybody to episode 76 of the Unchained Vodcast, not Camelot Unchained edition. Today,
Sort of.
we are gathered here today to talk about Final Stand Ragnarok, the new game announced by City State Entertainment. We are not going to be really talking about, the announcement itself. Kind of did that in the last episode. Not going to be talking about development timelines or issues or any of that. We're going to talk a little bit about, how we think it might contribute towards Camelot Unchained and stuff like that. But really, we're going to be focusing on the game, things we would like to see from it, things we hope we might see from it, and so on and so forth. So I want to start off with the hell is Final Stand Ragnarok to give us a basis to start with. Now, given the immense list of people currently watching live, I'm pretty sure all of you are pretty comfortable with what it is. But in case some of you are not, Final Stand Ragnarok is essentially their new game that they've been developing for 6 months-ish, according to their article anyway, that they put out on Massively. It's a co-op PvE title to be essentially everything that Camelot Unchained is very much not. And they're basically using some of the same CU tech, the CU engine itself, to try to create massive PvE co-op battles, more or less kind of a tower defense style game where you're in kind of a co-op PvE mode against hordes of like 1,000 plus NPCs, which, to be fair, is something that hasn't really been done in a lot of games, because just the technology for that many enemies at once is not something that a lot of people can necessarily pull off. It is intended to be buy to play, as I recall, with like battle passes, which I generally don't like. But
with
anyway,
the exception of backers up to
yes,
those who were backed prior up to that announcement get the game for free.
yes. So everybody who was already backed for CU doesn't have to buy it, but otherwise buy to play model with some degree of not pay to win microtransaction, battle pass, that sort of thing. I know the group size they seem to be shaky on at present. It was they seem to suggest it was around like 10 people maybe, but could be much larger because the engine doesn't care, as they said.
Yeah, they've definitely been changing that for testing purposes, just internally with groups of 2, so we know they can increase and decrease that group size as needed.
It's got a lot of the same, seems to have a lot of the same physics and stuff that CU has knockback, which you can see in some of the gameplay video footage and stuff they put in there. It's like bodies getting knocked up into the air and thrown around. There's a number of different NPC types. I believe they said they wanted to have 12 for the launch of the game, and currently they have basically 2, like magic and melee.
They haven't concepted of the 12. Yeah. They have drawings of those 12. I think they're all like undead-looking things is the theme of it.
Yeah, it's all, I think, supposed to be like the dishonored dead sort of thing. Though I think they're supposed to have some different themes on like because it sounded like when they were talking about that there would be different themes on the armies of undead. Just the one they were showing during the video was this particular dishonored undead thing. But so I imagine the NPC types are going to be similar, but maybe just skinned differently or something. We don't really know. Hello, CeeLo. The last thing I had about it was that there is supposed to be some sort of progression system for the game as well.
It seemed to impart that idea, with items that can drop during the course of the match that you can grab to become more potent to some degree.
Yeah, so I don't know if they said there were 12 enemy factions. I know that they definitely said, or it's definitely sounded like they were saying there were going to be multiple factions of types of enemies you could fight against. So it's not always like the Dishonored Dead. That was just the one they were showing and the one they have working right now. But I believe there's also supposed to be different classes of NPCs. It's not just like melee and magic, which is what they have right now. But there'll be different ones within whatever the faction or
I watched
enemy
part
is.
of it today, and that part was in there. He said there were 12 different NPC variations.
Yeah. So, first thing, let's talk about the potential as a game. Now, I can say, and I think I don't think anyone would really disagree, or many people would disagree with me, because I know I talked to a number of people who already agree that the first impressions of the game are, like, could be interesting, doesn't immediately look extremely exciting. There's nothing that in there that made me go like, oh yeah, I totally want to do that. I was just like, I mean, it's free, so sure. To me, it's a little bit like, to me, it feels a little bit like a mix between a fantasy version. It's like a fantasy version of a mix between Sanctum, which I don't believe, I believe you said last time you haven't played.
I have not.
Which is basically a game. It's like a kind of a phase-based tower defense game where you build up your defenses and your approach. But it's a first-person shooter game where you can play with multiple people, and so you all kind of build this approach, and then the enemies come in, and you can like run around shooting them and stuff. And there's towers and tower defense and stuff, and a little bit of Left 4 Dead.
I got that impression for sure.
And that's kind of the impression I have, I guess, the initial.
Although with like the Left 4 Dead setting or things like that, things are typically presented at you in waves. Still a lot of things happening all at once, but generally a wave happens and you get through it and you push a little bit further, and then another wave happens. And this is almost the reverse of that, where at least initially it all felt like it came rushing in all at once, and instead of you pushing forward, you just kind of sat around and let them come to you.
A little bit, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm hoping we'll see change a little bit, because if they're trying to have this be exciting, I figure there have to be waves of enemies. Like the enemies, and we did see in a video a little bit of them kind of coming in and then some more rush in. And I'm thinking, it's going to need to change a little bit. Because one of the things that I thought of when I was considering it and trying to think, like, could this actually be a good game? One of the things that came to mind was, I almost feel like I want it to be more like Left 4 Dead. Not in like the gameplay of Left 4 Dead, walking as you said and encountering enemies and them coming in waves, but in that, one of the foundational principles of Camelot Unchained is chaos goes boing. And what I would like to see in a game like this that I think would help to make it more interesting is if the Overmind, that's what it is, the Overmind system which is very similar in sounding in concept to the system that Left 4 Dead uses for controlling their NPCs. If it had ways of more dynamically introducing enemies to attack you in waves. So, you have like one wave that just rushes in, but then as the scenario builds, maybe it has all kinds of different things that come in. Like maybe a meteor flies down, smashes the ground near your tower, and a bunch of things start scattering around from it and swarming over a part of your base. So you have to rush over there to deal with it. And then some flying things come in and do something else. Or maybe a giant boss comes in from the ground itself or something. Just to vary it up so it's not always like, oh, look, there's another horde of things smashing themselves into your wall. Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty cool part of games like that with Left 4 Dead, where they had a few of those select types of horde NPCs that had very unique things that always changed the table in those moments when they arrived to the field, and you knew they were coming. You could hear, sound effects of that type of thing about to happen, and it always made things tense when we knew that we were going to run into that situation.
Yeah.
And having those types of variable events are always fun, I think.
Now, before I get too much into our speculation on what we think can make the game better, I do want to also ask, for those of you in chat, what were your initial impressions and thoughts of Ragnarok? Not just in terms of CU, but in terms of it as a game. And also for you, Bran, what are your initial feelings on the game?
Take away the frustration and anger and WTF moment of that announcement. Once I actually looked at it and rewatched it, going into it with a new mindset, I actually liked it. The things I was seeing, not necessarily how Mark was playing the game. He was very distracted. and that showed. But what was happening, I liked. I'm actually a huge fan of that type of style of graphics. Like
Mm-hmm.
WildStar in particular. The MMO itself sucked. I loved the visual aesthetic to WildStar, and I like that with Ragnarok if they can pull something similar off.
Yeah, I'm pretty fine with like kind of more stylistic cartoony graphics, like not to the full extent of like full blown cartoons, but where it is a bit more stylized, has a bit more pop to the colors and everything, and not taking itself so ridiculously seriously all the time. Um, I see. Unchained doesn't have a feel for it. It's too early, and I can agree with that. Like there were a number of people that kind of lashed out saying the game looks like garbage, and I'm looking at it going, I mean, well, it's obviously like a very early version of the game. This is not super thoroughly fleshed out. Now, why they showed us this early of a version of the game, that's a different thing. We're not really getting into that
No.
per se, but for whatever reason they showed us a very early version of the game. It does definitely seem to be a pretty early version. Now they said what it was that they made some comment on the thing about when the game was coming out, and it was like
The goal
nine
was end of
months.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So um, I mean that's not exactly a huge amount of time to change it, but given that all they really need to do is
Some
NPC
lighting,
code
new
and more
textures.
about add features.
Yeah. I think there's an appeal for it as a casual gaming environment to do something, with either my girlfriend, with friends, whenever we just want to pick up a game and do something that
Hmm.
could kill 2 hours of time and be enjoyable. Hopefully, it has that feeling.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I played Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 a lot. I still sometimes feel like going and playing Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. So I can feel, which is essentially a game where you walk down the streets and you fight endless waves of zombies. It's not a very complex game, but people do like it. So I can see, and I do like tower defense games, so I can see enjoying it. For me, I think the difference between a game like Sanctum and like Left 4 Dead and things like that compared to this are they're very fast paced games. You're also not sitting and defending. You're moving until the very end,
Hmm.
which is like the end scenario for every Left 4 Dead campaign. But that's only one part of it. The rest of the time, you're sitting there. You're moving through areas. You're progressing along the path and fighting hordes of things at the same time. But it's also these are FPS games where it's faster paced. You're running around, you're shooting stuff, and this game is definitely more fast paced than Camelot Unchained is intended to be. But like from what he showed us, I was like, well, I don't know that this is going to be fast paced enough to be exciting as it is right now. Maybe Melee might be more fast paced and exciting than the Archer he was playing. I don't know. But
It's possible,
it does
or
seem like it
using other
needs.
abilities.
It does seem rather like the game, or at least what we saw of it. It needs something to make it iconic, to make it have a bit of zing to it. I was looking back over the chat.
Yeah, the 1,000 NPCs or higher, and I've seen this a lot recently. The number count of NPCs is not necessarily the best selling point. It's a great thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone seems to be looking for something else attached to that.
I very much agree. I do think it needs a little bit of something. And like I said, I thought like maybe some more dynamic and chaotic content. Maybe really embracing that concept of chaos goes boing. Really embracing the idea of adding chaotic elements to this game to mix things up and make them dynamic could be that thing. If they find ways to really emphasize that to keep you always on your toes. So even though you're defending the tower, you never really know exactly how the battle's going to go. It's always going to be a little bit different. It's always going to be switching up. I think that could possibly be something that would pull people in more because I agree. I think having like 1,000+ enemies at once is cool. Does that necessarily make an awesome game? I don't know that it necessarily needs like versus mode. Like someone mentioned that. I would like a
Mhm.
competitive element. Like if you could have like versus score mode or something. Or if you could have like 2 towers and maybe you're competing to do something first or get the most points or something. I don't know. I just like at the same time I'm like, how do you do versus with
Yeah,
swarms of zombies?
much like the Cherry Keep Siege for CU testing is a siege stress test or simulation. I think it's going to be important for them to not make this an NPC ragdoll simulation where you're just,
Yeah.
Sauron, Lord of the Rings style, just bashing 20 people across the map, and that's all you're doing
Yeah.
repeatedly.
Now, I will say, there's, Left 4 Dead is also an example of a game where I'm like, how would you do versus in that? But you can play some of the zombies and stuff and run around and do things. And so that is something they could potentially do too. They could have people in amongst the horde controlling NPCs or
Hmm.
helping or playing like more significant boss characters or something that people kill that aren't as powerful as the defenders themselves, but are making it more challenging and stuff. That's potentially something they could do kind of in the Left 4 Dead model again for Left 4 Dead 2. I definitely don't have a problem with tons of enemies and just grinding and slaughtering them because like one of my favorite games from back in the day was oh god, I just forgot the name of the game. Dynasty Warriors, which is literally walking around through hordes of enemies and just
Hmm.
combo smashing the crap out of them with a weapon. And
It can be
that is
fun
it.
sometimes.
And I liked playing
Yeah.
it with people. I like just walking around
Yeah.
playing it with people. Um,
There's an MMO C4, I think is what it was called way back
yeah,
when
yeah.
that we
It
that
was
we played. Similar.
it was similar. That one was kind of fun. But that being said, as I said, I do kind of agree. Like we need more. We need a
Yeah.
little bit more than that. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about its potential as a game. Like, all right, we saw the base model of what they put forward while MJ was shooting the ground for like an hour. Um, what are some things that they could do to make the game besides what we've kind of already said? What are some other things that they could do to make the game have more of an identity that stands out, make the game more compelling than just pew-pewing thousands
Right.
of NPCs?
Um, I mean, a staple of any true defender type game, whether it's a mobile game or a console game, is the ability to upgrade defenses, the ability
Mm-hmm.
to almost have a currency of some type that you get in game that you use to build your upgrades to make it more strategy defense.
Absolutely. One of the things I was thinking of that I would love to see is actual keep building. Um, Actual building defenses around the tower. I mean, that's pretty standard for tower defense is being able to build defenses and,
Hmm.
as you said, being able to upgrade them. But also, I'm like, Camelot Unchained has this whole cube and building engine. Are they really not going to use that at all in this game? Like that's not a thing. It's a staple of tower defense to be able to build defenses and upgrade them. Camelot Unchained has theoretically, or is supposed to have, eventually a building system to build keeps and stuff on the spot and go. So
Yeah.
it would seem like this is a perfect testing ground for it.
And that's funny because they are doing cube updates this month. It's been at least part of yesterday's, or 2 days ago, the wrap up news included some cube updates. So maybe they're going that route.
Yeah, I mean, even if it was pre-built stuff, even if it was like, okay, you have
Right.
this type of wall and this type of wall and this type of thing, at least being able to decide where to put them and throw them down to kind of block progress and be able to repair them um, while they're getting destroyed. I mean, at that point, we're pushing a little bit towards Fortnite as well.
A little bit, minus the PvP aspect.
Yeah, but
But they also have the opportunity to do that almost for free with the Builders Brigade.
yeah. And that I think does add a strategic element that even again in and of itself, I don't know that that's enough. Um, but it adds another like strategic layer to the game to make it a little bit
Hmm.
more complex. Also to add a little more variation because your defenses each time can be different. You can have different things you can do, different things you can have progression on and upgrade. You can upgrade better walls or towers or something. Um, I also think that I'd kind of asked about this during the stream, and they kind of said no, but I was like, we have a tower to defend. Is this going to have any keep defense, like keep being sieged or destroyed? And they kind of seem to say no. And I was like, I feel like that's a mistake. Like, I feel like this game should have, I'm not saying like a huge castle, but at least have walls and stuff around the tower that that we can fight on, that vary up the
Mhm.
terrain. Because if the NPCs can climb up the wall, or they can fly over the wall, or they can land on a meteor or whatever behind the wall, and we have to climb up the wall to fight them, or jump off the wall to fight them, or run around, that makes the game much more dynamic for us instead of just I'm running in circles around the tower. Pew pew
Yeah.
pew 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 pew. I'm still running in circles around the tower.
Anything to add variation or challenge to these waves as they're filing in. You mentioned flying creatures, not just for player variation, but NPC variation to create new strategy elements of how you
Mm-hmm.
have to approach these waves.
Well, and they are working on wyverns. They've
They
been
are.
touching on that a little bit. So I do assume there might be like flying units, or maybe wyverns can be a way to fly in and like drop off things on top of your
Mhm.
base or something. Um, Oldovic suggested having the depths as a alternative location. I do think having some underground locations, things like that, could be a definitely anything changing up scenery or something is going to help.
Yeah.
With things a little bit, especially underground. There could be a lot of things that could happen. If you had NPCs crawling on the ceiling and stuff and then dropping down, that could be a unique element for a different type of area.
I hope and I think that there should be some level of team scaling using AI teammates. In case you don't have a big group of friends, you need the ability to log in with more than just 2 or 3
Yeah.
people. Maybe want a 6-man team, and you can file in 3 AI team members, and the ability to scale that team size based off of how many people you have.
um, Swiper pointed back on the Smart Gamer Live did an episode on this the other week, and Swiper pointed out something on there that I thought was interesting. Again, which was tying this more directly to Camelot Unchained. And his example was basically kind of like tying this to your account so that if you have progression and stuff in this game, it carries over in some ways to your Camelot Unchained account. Kind of like I was thinking like Eve and Dust 514, where Dust 514 was like the ground planet based
Hmm.
marine version of Eve Online, and ships from Eve could actually like shoot down on the planet and like attack battles and stuff. And I don't know that we necessarily need like that level of integration, but I was thinking like, at the very least, maybe when both games are live, maybe participation, taking a break and playing Final Stand Ragnarok might get like realm renown or something. Um, that way, if they tied the lore of the two games together and made some sort of a, like this is like the afterlife battles and stuff, it wouldn't be hard to really come up with some kind of justification. They could have at least, and again, this isn't necessarily something that would make the gameplay for Ragnarok more compelling as much as making it at least give you some kind of returning reward for Camelot Unchained players who like,
Hmm.
oh, I want to take a break and go play Final Stand Ragnarok, and then you go like, oh, at least I'm still getting some realm renown. Do 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 do.
At the very least, some cosmetic achievements. If you
Maybe,
do
yeah,
certain things in Ragnarok, or vice versa, Camelot Unchained, you can get a cosmetic unlock of some
sure.
kind for one or the other. People love their cosmetics. Also, not a gameplay thing necessarily. And kind of tying in with how Mark has been calling Ragnarok as of late, he keeps calling it a mod, is kind of the word they're using now.
Mm-hmm.
Much like Gary's mod was a thing built. I wouldn't say necessarily using the Valve engine. I want to say it used a part of the technology of Valve engine, and then Valve actually published it. But it is essentially a mod of the engine, and I don't know where I was going with this. I would love to see certain just freedom of controls to change certain aspects of what the mod is doing, like physics levels, to be able to increase physics or decrease physics, to have some really crazy
Oh,
uh,
I see what you're saying.
moments
Yeah,
of like ragdoll, increase ragdoll. So when you hit someone, they go flying off the screen just
like
to have
different
fun.
game modes.
Yeah, sort of. Just mostly just the settings to really go crazy with the physics levels
Well, no,
or
that's what I mean. Like different
yeah.
game modes. Like there might be like a low grav game mode
Oh,
where you
sure,
go in there and you're just
exactly.
like whoa,
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, kind of like Andrean said, like mutators in the Left 4 Dead 2. They had the different mutations for different game modes, and sometimes different undead would be like super powerful, or you'd have different kind of effects and things going on that just change it up. So they're weird, but it's still just kind of like a weird, fun thing to do, you know?
Right.
I could definitely say that because I mean that's as like old as online multiplayer games get. I mean, I remember
Mm-hmm.
having like weird, you see that stuff in Quake, some weird game modes where you just, you know, it
Big
really
head
kind of messes with
mode
balance, but
or
who cares?
yeah.
You know, you're just having fun. Screw it. This isn't exactly like the most serious game in the universe
Right.
anyway. Like they don't even seem to be painting it that way. So why not? Let's see. I was looking to see what else I had here. My main thing was the dynamic changes in battles. You know, having different NPCs, NPC bosses that would vary between matches and stuff, and different ways for them to arrive. Just really, maybe some games take place and there's a veil storm going on or some stuff. You know, just different things that can go on to really change the conditions of
Mm-hmm.
the battles so that they're not always the same.
Yeah, I mean, it is a PvE game at heart, so change it up sometimes. Maybe not have 1,000 NPCs swarming, and maybe just one big boss, as you mentioned, NPC that has certain mechanics to it that you have to deal with. It's not just wailing away on the tower while you shoot it or something. It's doing things to you and the things around it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things they could do. I mean, they could have one of the things I'd love to see is different strategies being used in a battle, and I think this would be best if they had keeps. If towers generally had keeps around them, and you could still build some other defenses like out beyond that a little bit, using like the cube style building and stuff, but or imported, pre-made stuff, but then there's like phases to battle. Like there could be a siege phase in this game where maybe the enemy NPCs actually do have siege and catapults and stuff, and they're bombarding or climbing over your walls or both. And you have to deal with that. But then when your wall breaches, they switch to a different type of NPC and start rushing into your base. And so you have a different phase there where you're like, oh, now we lost the wall, so now we're in the courtyard phase of this scenario, and we're doing all that stuff. But also maybe even based around like bosses. Like maybe this boss that you load in this game and the Overmind says, all right, I'm going to use this NPC boss type for this fight. So then it's like a siege boss, and it comes out and starts hurling these huge flaming balls at the keep from a distance. So you actually have to rush out to kill it instead of
Yeah.
staying in the base. And then like another one might be this big hulking like Cloverfield type monster that moves into your base, but things stop rushing. Like there's no more horde. But then as it comes in, things are continually spawning off of it. Like other mobs are just spawning and dropping down onto the base from its back and stuff and swarming over stuff. So it's a totally different type of battle at that point instead of just the constant zerg.
Yeah, I think doing anything like that would add more dimension to the game, and possibly time to make it, pushing it past end of this year idea.
Maybe. I mean, I guess it depends on what they have in mind for these
Yeah,
NPCs and stuff.
if they don't already plan on doing that, you know.
If they don't like, if it's coming out like as it appears to be right now, but just improved. I don't know. I mean, I'd still play it. I'm just like, I don't know how much I would play it, and I certainly wouldn't pay for it. I would be like, oh, well, I've got it for free,
There would
so
be
I'll
a
play
very
it some.
low amount of money I'd be willing to pay for it, and it's not over $10.
Yeah. I mean, most of the games that I'm willing to play online and pay for like microtransaction and battle pass and stuff for are PvP games, not really like PvE games. Admittedly, I don't play a lot of PvE co-op games, so I may be the wrong market for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the intent of the game itself, from their business model standpoint, is they got the funds to do other things for CU, but I'm hoping they're also thinking about it as they need a recurring income that they have yet to have during the stretch of development for any of the stuff they've been working on. And this will hopefully create some recurring income. But then you have to worry about the actual marketing of the game compared to the plethora of games out there. If I'm only going to spend 2 hours on this casual game, what's going to bring it to the table for me rather than playing the many other games we have installed that we can spend 2 hours just wasting our life with?
Now, Oldovik mentioned designing an NPC, like having your own NPC designers who could create your own mobs and shift out their abilities and stuff,
That would be
which
cool.
could be interesting. And actually, back to his previous comment about having a versus mode. One thing I don't know how they would do it, but one thing I have always kind of wanted to see is like a tower defense game where like one person's defending this tower, another person's defending this tower, and they are both defending their tower from mobs, but also sending mobs strategically at each other. Not like a MOBA lane fighting style, but like,
Mhm.
okay, I have defended against your mobs. Now what am I gonna send at you? Ha ha ha! I want to send this and this and this, and then you like they attack and they're like, oh, now I've defended against your stuff, so I have to send this and this and this. Looking at what the person has built and upgraded for their
Yeah,
defenses, and then deciding, yeah, I'm gonna attack you with that, ha ha. And then so you kind of it would be like the tower defense where you upgrade your defenses, but you also maybe upgrade
you
certain
are the
types of
overmind
mobs,
to
and
each
you're
other.
intelligently deciding, no,
Yeah.
I see what you did there. I'm going to send this at you, and I'm going to upgrade these flyer units or something. And
Yeah, like a top-down view of the map and what they're doing. They're in
yeah,
first-person mode, and you have like a point allocation that all your units have certain point values, and you have to pick, what you're sending at them for your wave. That'd be cool.
yeah,
I think that I would dig that.
yeah. Now it would be difficult to pull off, especially with how long some people take to do things in
Yes,
games online.
yes.
But
But it would all be live, like it'd be happening in the moment, with the
yeah,
exception of
yeah.
maybe
It'd
a
have to be very
downtime.
short. It'd have to be short breaks between waves. Like you're just
Yeah,
like, all right, we have a pause of like 1.5 minutes. Go do your stuff. And you're like, upgrade this, upgrade this. What's he got? He's got a really big lightning tower. So I'm gonna stop sending this crap and I'm gonna upgrade this thing, and I'm gonna send this, this, and this. And then you go do your stuff and see what happens.
not sure if any of that kind of stuff would make it if they haven't already planned on things like that to an end
Oh
of year
yeah,
goal.
yeah.
Maybe something as an addition down the road.
That would be like a
But
whole expansion if they hadn't
yeah,
planned for that.
yeah.
I would imagine. But yeah, Grimslag, I do think that there is some value in that idea of kind of like the Left 4 Dead 2 model of maybe allowing people to play certain NPCs and certain monsters and stuff as a part of that Zerg and attacking the keep to add an intelligent element. Maybe not even as like the required portion of the key game, but maybe as a specific game mode to allow a versus setup.
Kind of like an evolve type game mode,
Yeah.
where you maybe have some overmind controls to give your fellow horde of NPCs.
Yeah, but I mean, like in Left 4 Dead, they have a versus mode where you still have the normal kind of Zerg waves as you're going through
Mhm.
the game, but another team is basically playing the special infected, so the boomer, the licker, etc., or smoker, sorry, not the licker, and they can intelligently use that stuff. So like one of them can be like, all right, I'm gonna go puke on them and cause a Zerg of things to swarm in, while someone else is already set up on top of a rooftop and uses his tongue to drag someone off into the horde as they're getting barfed on, and so it adds a much more coordinated level to that
Yeah,
to the horde. Besides just periodically things swarm. It
I
could be
think
interesting.
adding something like that might draw some of the more unchained focused individuals who don't want really anything at the moment to deal with FSR. Maybe draw some of their uh,
Yeah,
attention just a little bit.
I'm assuming it's something they're not doing because they've said it's a PVE game.
Yeah,
That really is kind of more PvP. Um, but I think it could be cool. Uh, let's see. Did anybody have any other things besides PvP stuff that could make the game more filled out? looking back over my notes to see if
Uh,
I had anything, but
well, we talked about progression to an extent. We know you can pick up items. We've seen the UI for that working in the live stream, where you find a box and open it and get an item. Um, maybe a very, very small amount of crafting or progression with the item. Maybe not you, but where you can, have a default item, then you pick up some base level components that you can attach to it to change the way your weapon works slightly.
yeah. One thing that could be interesting that I just thought of is if, as a part of the progression system, you had like a house. Like obviously it's not really a multiplayer game in that fashion. You can't have a house to hang out in, but if you got like decor and stuff that you could decorate your like armory, and then you can get upgrades for that, which you can then in turn use to upgrade certain gear and items that you might find. So it's not just as straightforward as, oh, I got enough points, let me upgrade my sword, but then you
Mm-hmm.
can just have some cool like design elements and things that you can do. And maybe like upgrading your armory or whatever also upgrades your avatar so that you have some visual representation of some of that. I don't know. I just I could just picture logging into the game and you have like a very bare bones like landing page and armory where you would upgrade your stuff, but then as you progress, it becomes more kind of customized and interesting. Not as like a major aspect of the game, but just kind of a thing that just
Yeah.
grows to show
Um,
your progression.
I think Overwatch, with the
Yeah, big
skins
movie.
that you can constantly find as an RNG element, something like that could be interesting here. We know that the heroes for FSR are they are what they are. There's no custom spell making. They come with the preset abilities. That's what they get. But giving you the opportunity to change the way they look to an extent, rather than just what you see is what you get, was just another element of dimension.
Yeah, we got updated mood box. That was giving people a very incorrect message. How do you rank players? Quantity versus quality. How long do you stay ranked up? I'm not sure if I understand the question. Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand that question. I mean, I'm assuming character progression is going to be permanent in Ragnarok. Um, because it is a PVE game primarily. Even if they did have like a versus mode, that's kind of why I like the idea of like maybe like a versus mode where you play as an NPC mob, or you can send NPC mobs towards each other from your tower or something, because then your own character progression doesn't necessarily translate into that. Character progression might solely be within the PVE co-op element of it.
I could see a couple layers of progression where you have more of an account progression that you unlock certain things that you can use permanently through the course of playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there will definitely be game only progression that each game you start with at a certain zero level that you earn some things in the course of playing longer in your waves that you build up a little bit. And next time, you log off, come back at the next day. If you play, you start at zero again, like with a new game, and
Mm-hmm.
work your way up. And
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about how this could possibly help CU. I mean, we already
hmm
have a little bit. Obviously, CSE having more money is good. Them having either selling this game or having some sort of a more consistent monthly income would just be beneficial for development of CU. And they've suggested that they've hired more people on with the investments that they've gotten, which will, in the long term, help development of Camelot Unchained. But from other aspects, they have to build tech for this game, and this game
yes,
is based largely on CU's technology.
yep, same engine.
This is one of the reasons why I'm slightly perplexed if they don't have building in this game, because as I said, this seems like this would be a perfect test ground for the building systems we need for Camelot Unchained.
Yeah,
Players to be able to build and place and repair buildings and walls, or wall segments at least.
I agree. I think it. I don't know how easy it is to add it. I do know Cube. Cube is kind of like the sister of FSR. It is also kind of a mod to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the tech that allows Cube to be Cube is centrally located in the engine. So I don't think it should be terribly difficult to plug that in to an extent. It'll probably need some changes if they do
Mm-hmm.
to limit it. You don't want the full building element that Cube is in this type of game, I don't think. Uh, but it has to be there. Something like that really would make this game different.
Yeah. Well, like what I would like to see, honestly, is I would like to see the towers be more than just towers. I'd like to see tower with like a keep wall around it, like a square wall with stairs and a wall you can walk around on, and maybe like little parapets and stuff, and the central tower, which is the objective for the horde to destroy, and like a gate. And you can't edit that. That just is. But you
Hmm.
can repair it. It takes
Yeah,
damage, and you can repair it. So then you're working on the repair mechanics. It can be destroyed, and maybe debris can do damage to you. Because then again, you can destroy. You can work on the siege and destruction mechanics and stuff for CU through that, and it would make the battle more interesting as well. But then maybe also there are pre-made things that you can build around that keep. Maybe not full walls that totally block progress, but like little shorter walls and stuff, or like little mini towers and things that you can defend from, or things that beyond just an ability based trap that you can actually kind of build out around that would change the flow of battle a little bit and is a little bit smaller in scale. So it's not full blown cube, but it's like, okay, well, here's some buildings, and this allows you to place them, decide where they want to go. It's limited. You can't necessarily put them anywhere, but you can place them, you can build them. They take a minute to go up. You can repair them, they can be destroyed. And so then that kind of brings in elements of that whole cube system and
yeah,
would hopefully make the game more interesting because you're going to be building different types of defenses and things the whole time.
right. There's so many reasons why it should be in and why it's a good idea to be in. The ones you just said, not to mention the whole point of them shifting to this and with their Cherry Keep Siege and their 3D pathing tech was to account for player made structures. They have the tech. It'll account for you putting a wall wherever you want
Mm-hmm.
because they've designed it to do that. They're supposed to be designing it to do
Yeah,
that.
it's supposed to work
Uh,
that way.
and when they announced this, a lot of people were like, well, what about this game transitions to CU? And the answer is always all of this stuff is part of the engine. The engine is everything. So what we did here, we technically did for CU at the same time. It's all interchangeable. So the reverse should also be true. Anything in CU should be capable to be done with ease in FSR because it's the central engine.
Let's see. I was looking at Odovic's question about reward. Do you reward success over playing more often? How does a good player? I mean, I would guess that from what I've seen in most games of this fashion, similar multiplayer games, kind of both. You always get some sort of reward for playing, but obviously if you win, you probably get more, and progression is usually permanent. Um,
Or doing certain things along the course
yeah,
of it yield a point value that if you can still win and not do certain things to win and you don't get those extra points that
yeah.
because you didn't do those things.
Now they haven't said much about what the progression system is. I don't know at all whether it's just going to be a point system that you progress and you gain upgrades. That we saw items dropping in battle.
Mhm.
Now I don't know if those are only for that battle or if those are items that you then equip and keep permanently.
I suspect my guess is it would be just for that fight.
Unless it's like a Diablo style system where they literally drop items and you just keep getting upgraded items over and over and over and
Possible.
over again. And maybe there is some permanent character class progression. Like the more you play each class, you get certain upgrades to them, and then you also just get gear. They could go with a very Diablo esque progression system where you're just continually getting items, and there are some permanent stat bonuses and things that you get and unlock some new abilities. But majority of your power really kind of comes from just collecting items that you keep getting from mobs, and so you're kind of grinding mobs and bosses for better gear and more unique gear and stuff. I mean, that's how
That's
Diablo
what
does
it
it, and a lot of
sounds
people like
like.
it. So
Yeah. I think a lot of it will be focused on items, whether you keep them or not. Don't know yet. Um, I could see them, as far as items go, not just gear items, but consumable items that probably don't tie into progression, but to be used in the course of the fight, heals or bombs or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Well, and having, I definitely think that, if they could have player built maps, I don't know that that's. I have a feeling that that is not going to be a thing at launch, just because I don't see them having time to build the UI for it.
Yeah, yeah.
For players to actually build their own maps and stuff. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it. I don't think so. But maybe later on. But I could see it being definitely interesting because I always like things when the community and players can build their own content and maps for stuff, instead of just having it always be, dev driven. Yeah, I think otherwise the testing elements that this game really contributes does come down to just engine stress, physics with like the knockback and ragdolling and everything, allowing the games to test that stuff, and like server performance.
We did, and this could yield results in the future. We did get the extra class out of the initial designing of this game. The Spirit Mage class, which was an extender class for CU, got dealt with earlier rather than later because of this game. Because there was a Spirit Mage like class in FSR. Yeah, potentially. I could see if they came up with another concept for a class that was utilized by both games, that might push a priority to getting it in sooner rather than later.
Well, I felt like the reason they said that this was contributing to the Spirit Mage was because they had to work on the pathing for AI.
They had to work on pathing for AI. I want to say I saw something about an actual class in FSR that used pets.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of why they were working on it. I could be wrong. But the concept is there. If they, say, come out with a stealth class idea for FSR, and they haven't yet touched stealth in Camelot Unchained, that might create a priority to actually work on it sooner rather than later, because both games would utilize it.
Yeah, possibly. I do think one of the things that is important to consider is that playing FSR, like CU backers and stuff, playing FSR and testing it and playing it is to a certain extent testing for Camelot Unchained. And this is one reason why I kind of like the idea of the game, even if it's not like a super amazing game, because it's been ages since we've had any real testing development for Camelot Unchained. And yeah, we're working on a new scenario and everything, but given how long it takes to come out with stuff and how far the game seems like it is from launch, I can only see this being basically, it's almost like another testing scenario for us, and it's just another fun way to test the server and test the physics and the server stress and everything that isn't just doing Cherry Hill Keep over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I like Cherry Hill Keep. I really liked it when it first came out. My liking of it decreases every time we do it. And so from that standpoint, I can kind of see it being like I said, kind of a nice way to do that. And I would even go as far as to say that, they had at one point, I don't believe I'm making this up. I believe at one point they said that they were going to kind of like reward backers for testing.
They did at one point.
Points and stuff.
And
I'm like, you could include this in that, since it is technically server testing and everything for Camelot Unchained.
That was the Beta 1 document when that was released in July of 2018. They were talking about the dragon circles. Was never mentioned ever again after that couple of weeks of info. And the whole scenario idea was supposed to be this competitive natured thing and not stress test scenarios. It just never came to be, so I doubt. But they could do that if they actually started doing that competitive reward system.
This has been kind of a thing, like in theory. On the note of things that are made up, Uh, sort of. Not in the after we did our last episode, I will throw out. I went on Smart Gamer Live, and I said that I thought CSE had come into development of the game like with Kickstarter, saying that they already had the base engine built, and that they were just currently working on improving it. But it's been years of them improving it, and what the hell? And I heard that there were some people that were like, "Wait, that wasn't a thing." Like they didn't have the engine. So I went and looked it up. I spent quite a while digging through the original videos from the Kickstarter and everything, and so I did want to mea culpa it a little bit publicly and say they didn't technically say that. Like I think it's more of I misinterpreted something they said during one of the early videos. They did say that they had created I don't remember the exact wording now because it's been a couple of weeks, but they had created a version of the engine. So they did kind of say like we have the engine, but the way they said it was like we have a version of the engine. So like they basically had an engine demo, I guess, instead of having the engine and then expanding it.
They had some working things in that engine demo that are not currently working in today's engine. So.
So I just wanted to take a second to mea culpa that and be like, yeah, okay, I won't say I was wrong as much as I will say I probably misinterpreted it. They did kind of say they had an engine, but no, they did not say like we have an engine already or anything like that. So
yeah, I definitely think
to publicly own up to it.
Just getting back to how FSR can help CU. You touched upon veil storms, weather effects, and scripted events like that would be a great thing for FSR just to have it, and would function and transition fully into CU as the weather system or veil storms or things like that, random scripted events, etc.
I mean, like, could you imagine you get into an FSR match and there's like, even if it's just basic weather, there's a heavy fog scenario where you can't actually see more than like 30 feet out in front of you, like, and then there's just like shadows, and then they emerge into the fog, like swarming stuff. That would totally change the battle and how you go into it. And especially if you had different ways to spec your classes. This is something else they could do, instead of just having like the archer go pew 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 the whole time. If you could spec to like more of a trap focused archer, like at the beginning of a battle, you could get in there and go, oh god, we're in fog scenario. Okay, traps. I'm going to focus on all my traps. You switch out some stats or something real quick, or you can swap your class to like a slightly different variation or something to counter the scenario you're in. That could be, or even if it's just swapping out your abilities or something, that could be, a cool thing to mix up the game instead of just, yep, we're out here in clear sky running circles around the tower, shooting things for the 300th time.
Yeah, I think kind of what it sounds like it's coming down to is the ideas that at least we have for adding gameplay elements are all things that would really help create some of the things we want to see kind of in CU.
Yeah, we need to recreate actual RVR scenarios. Just have defensive logins built into the game too. People can just log right in. Maybe the NPC does that. They just that's how they sprout up out of the ground. They just kind of log in because that's where they logged out of the game. All right. So, is there anything else anybody wants to suggest or comment on as something they wanted to see, or anything you really want to see that you think might actually be in the game or that they addressed but they haven't, like they didn't show? Because that was one of the things of the stream. Like, I'm sorry, but Mark Jacobs running around shooting the ground repeatedly with his bow is not a very good way to present the game to us, because I was like, I want to stop.
Yeah. I would like to see them do a non-communicative stream, meaning that there's no one sitting there talking to us, or maybe one person is who's not playing, but have the team, as well as any of those of us in testing, actually play matches and just to show us the game with maybe Brian or someone there just kind of commentating on what's happening.
Yeah. Or maybe even like having somebody just fly around and show us the battle from different perspectives and stuff while
Yeah.
this stuff is just, taking place and people are actually defending it, so we're not just watching one person kind of shoot at them and not really able to tell what's going on with the abilities and stuff, and it's just things are happening. But then also just kind of seeing like what's going on, especially with the NPCs. Like, they're like, we've got the NPCs path better and everything. And I'm like, do you? Because it just looks like they're all converging in one path and then rushing straight at everybody.
I was actually paying attention to that when I rewatched it today, just specifically on that element, and I could see NPCs breaking off and beelining to other players, and it definitely looked more intelligent than what I had seen in Cherry Keep. So I'll give them that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't know that that's immense progress because Cherry Hill Keep was pretty sad. I mean, they're just like dumb as rocks right up against walls.
Yeah,
We didn't have that, so that is progress for sure.
Yeah.
But like, I would like to see like more than just them rushing in and kind of splintering off, but like people flanking the tower and stuff and coming around. And I don't know that at least I didn't notice anything like that, which would indicate actual intelligence on their attacking side.
I think they're still working on that.
Yeah.
I do think some of the features that they said were definitely in, just not up to kind of what they promoted it to be. I don't think Overmind is quite over mindful yet.
Yeah.
It's still working on it.
Yeah, and to be fair, Left 4 Dead is known for its awesome NPC controller and everything, and yet for the most part, it has preset places it spawns from, and they just rush out of hallways and stuff.
Yeah.
If anything, they just did a real good job of disguising that it's not super intelligent. It's more the special infected that are kind of smart, and everything else is just like. Meh.
This is a console and PC game so far. Mark said no intention for mobile yet. I actually think it should be put on mobile at some point. I think this is exactly the type of thing you would see on a mobile platform. And it's probably something I would play more on a phone than I would on my PC, especially if I was just out and had nothing else to do. So I would very much be interested in this coming to mobile at some point.
Yeah, as it is right now, I agree. Like, as the game is right now, I totally agree. If it had like building and upgrades and stuff, I don't know that stays feasible.
Yeah.
But as it is, like right now, like what they showed us, that was my thought as well. I was like, I don't even play mobile games. I have a couple games installed on my phone. I never play them because I don't like any of them. I never play anything on my phone. But I was still kind of like, well, as it is right now, like, sure, I would probably play this on my phone because he's just running around going pew 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 pew. I feel like you could do that on a phone.
I've played games on my phone where the only thing you do is tap your fingers on the screen, and for hours and hours and hours, I tapped and tapped and tapped, and I could totally do that here if that's all I was doing.
That's my wife. She's sitting there while we're watching TV, and she's like tapping stuff, playing a game. And I'm like, it looks so boring. What the crap?
And people buy that, and if
Sure.
they don't buy it, and if you have depends on your model, ads, free game with ads, or $1.99, whatever, they can make more money by putting it out to mobile, and I think that's important for them at this stage in their development for everything.
Yeah, Odovik's talking about porting your CU character into FSR. Given that the classes and everything seem like they're very different, I don't know that that's going to be feasible. Maybe porting like costumes or gear or cosmetics or something back and forth might be interesting. Like, through achievements and stuff. I mean, they could do that pretty easily. Like, you accomplish one thing in one game, you get achieve cosmetics or something in the other game.
But the actual model and textures would not necessarily be direct,
very
portable. Different poly counts and all that.
Very different, yeah.
But you can certainly have some pre-made elements that you get access to for achieving those achievements.
So that's pretty much all we know about the game for now. We don't really have an overwhelming abundance of information. Like I did note that even the Massively article where they did an interview for the game focused almost entirely on what this does for CU. And I was kind of like reading it like, this should have been a first red flag for them when they were started talking about this. That this interview almost asked no questions about FSR. It's all about Camelot Unchained and how this affects CU launch and
Mm-hmm.
yada yada yada, with only a couple questions about FSR. But my point is, we just don't really have a ton of information about it right now, and I don't think they'll be quick to give us more after the reception from the last stream. Uh,
I know they're testing. There's some people.
yeah,
There's an NDA specifically for FSR, so even if we were to have someone come on our show and talk about it, they couldn't. But there are people who know more about it, and they are testing. They did testing
sure.
this week. I know they're working on scalability for bringing servers up and down without needing to manually do it. And things seem to be okay as of Friday, but not okay enough to do testing this week, which was the plan.
Yeah, I just mean I don't think they're going to be like putting out like these are the classes we're doing and this is the
Yeah,
abilities and stuff. At least
not
in the
yet.
near future, just at least if I were them. Now, admittedly, I have criticized their PR skills in the past. So I don't know what they'll do. But if it were me, given the reception that was received, I would not blame them at all if they were like, yeah, let's hold off on the FSR info for a little while. Let's focus on CU info, and then we'll do an FSR dump, like info dump in like 2 months or something. But, about like all the classes and stuff.
I think we'll see a mix of testing for sure between the two.
Yeah. I think we'll definitely still see some testing and stuff come out, just not
Yeah,
like promo type
right.
info.
Supposedly, we're getting forums, I think sub forums on the current CSE forum that will split into the two CU and FSR with giving backers access to FSR specifically. Not sure when that's happening, but
Yeah, Oldevik's
supposedly.
asking if anybody's looking forward to FSR, and I wouldn't go that far. I don't even want scenarios in Camelot Unchained, so I'm still sitting there looking at all the scenarios and stuff they're working on, going, "Yeah, I really hope those are only for testing, and you're soon, and as we progress in testing, you're gonna get rid of those." So I'm not like thrilled and like I totally want to do FSR, but given I'm vaguely interested, and I think it could be pretty fun depending on how they do it and how much work they're actually going to put into it. But if they throw it out like as it is right now, then I'll play it some just because, sure, it's free and it's testing it is helping with testing the servers and stuff for CU in a way. But I don't see myself doing more than like, all right, maybe doing like a guild thing once a week or once every so often just to say like, hey, well, we can't do CU testing, but we can at least test this and have something else to do. It's a thing to do.
I'm slightly more interested than vaguely interested. But it again boils down to whether or not it's going to be fun
Yeah.
and has that element of replayability. A game like this has to be replayable, and if it's not, then it failed.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, I can see it being like I can see the potential for making it cool. If they were to have some interesting NPC and AI some AI controls and stuff for different enemy types and things and boss types and or special enemies and things, kind of like Left 4 Dead 2 has, where there's a lot of more interesting and dynamic ways that they can come at you and attack, and if the swarms are controlled in a more intelligent way, and if we have more dynamic battlegrounds to fight in besides just a circle with a freaking tower in the middle of it, depending on all of that, and if there's a lot more interesting and dynamic stuff that goes into it, then I could see myself getting excited for it. I could see it becoming not like a game that's like my top number one game to play, but something that I would perhaps play on the regular.
Yeah.
But it's going to really depend. Based on what they've shown so far, I'm more of a, sure.
Free game.
Free game. Could be cool. Would like it to be better. I don't know how it would look like a Super Smash Brothers clone with zombies because it's a very different type of game. um, maybe you meant in like the art type because it is kind of a cartoony style of art, which I'm pretty down for. Like I liked Wild Stars look too. I never played it, but I did like the look of the characters and stuff. I was down with it.
Yeah. There's just I think it's more the vibrancy of the textures, the color and saturation of it, and just the stylistic approach to the texturing.
Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of different approaches visually for games. I'm pretty flexible. I
I'm not
like a
too
lot
picky.
of gritty and dark stuff, but I also like cartoony stuff. So
Like I very much liked what we saw updated in CU, like that week leading up to that follow-up announcement, and there were a lot of people who said that this looks even worse than what we were getting. It's like I like it. I don't know.
yeah, not everything has to be gritty, super realistic for me.
It's personal preference.
Yeah. Anyway, we pretty well covered everything, I believe. Thanks everybody for coming out. Next episode, next month. We haven't really settled on what we were talking about. What we were gonna talk about, but they are coming out with more scenario information. They even put out like a little video this week. So
we got a map.
Yeah, we got a map. So it might be new scenario.
Or devout if we get devout info sooner.
Or both.
Or both.
I mean, we got a month before the next episode, both? So we could have a little bit of devout info. Good. We could have some scenario info and actually do an update, talk about new information for once. That hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks everybody, and thanks for coming out and chatting with us, and we will talk to you again next month.